Let's break that down, Louie.
Yes.
When you went to Kevin's house for the first time, why did you try to murder him?
I was born in San Francisco. I grew up in the Sunset District of San Francisco and have resided there for the majority of my life. I went to private school in San Francisco, played sports, wrestled, played rugby, threw shot put and discus, wrestled and played rugby in college, and stayed close with my family and friends. My first memory of Kevin Hines, and then probably the more clear memory would be one that he brings up in conversation often about going to his house and him being horrified of me. And
let's break that down, Louie.
Yes.
When you went to Kevin's house for the first time, why did you try to murder him?
So, I think the question should be, why would Kevin think that his new friend from high school was planning on murdering him? No, I don't remember what it was about. It was some joke, and then I ended up chasing him around his house, like the exterior of the house. He ran into the backyard, I chased him into the backyard, and he slid up onto his deck, and I caught him right as I was victorious at that moment. There was some anomalies. We had a pretty close friendship, but there became a point where Kevin was like constantly calling me and reaching out, and I was like, is he okay? And I think I don't know at what point, like what year that was, but it became apparent then that there was some kind of issue. And then later, Kevin would have breakdowns, and we'd kind of, as a group of friends, be there to reel him in, and he'd want to talk to me. And so it was usually the two of us in some room where I was just some kid who was not being the most gentle in conversation with Kevin, but I'd be like, come on, man, snap out of it. Get it together, what's happening? Not being the most empathetic. But it seemed to work. He would pull out of it, and we'd go on with the night or the day or our vacation, a weekend, a trip, or whatever it was. What would happen? I don't know. I mean, what kids do when they go out and drink, we'd have fun, have a party, hang out. But nothing out of the ordinary, I think, except for Kevin didn't drink, and the couple times that he did, he drank a ton. And so it was like, okay, maybe Kevin won't drink anymore, because it was just over the top. It was kind of not fun for him anymore. I don't think that clearly. It was never stated that way. But eventually we knew that, there were times when Kevin was very unhappy. I remember how astonished I was, how shocked I was when I found out that he'd jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge. So I don't think it was something that I really thought would happen. So it was never plainly stated. Kevin never said, guys, I'm thinking about killing myself, or Jake, I'm thinking about killing myself. I knew there were hard times, but I never thought it would go that far. I thought I lost a good buddy. It was terrible. I was visiting my girlfriend at the time. She had just gone away to college, and we got the call early in the morning, and were again just shocked. So we jumped in the car and drove drove down to the hospital in Marin County where Kevin was and saw him as soon as we were allowed. There was so much going on, and I didn't know a whole lot about the hospital or anything that was going on in the room, but it was bad. I mean, there were hoses in his side and black stuff getting pumped out of him. It was bad. I mean, I couldn't even take in. It was traumatizing. So to see all that, I couldn't take in everything. So I can't tell you everything that was going on. I don't have that clear of a picture, but I do recall that it was terrible. It was terrible. Like I thought I was going to lose him, you know. I was happy. I mean, to go from thinking you're going to lose a good buddy that you spent kind of some of the more formative years, like 4 years of college and evolution of life. So I was very happy and would try and visit him when I could, when we were allowed. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for him. I mean, I didn't have to do the work, but it was a long way for him to come, especially to where he is now. Night and day from where he was before. He made a lot of progress on his own. I mean, on his own with all the help of the people around him. So, but really, his life changed. I mean, I can't even explain in words when he met Margie. So Margie made Kevin a more stable, happy person because of his love for her. They would talk about things that I would never consider talking about with a significant other at that point in my life. So they were open books to each other, and Margie knew everything that she wanted to know about Kevin and vice versa. And I don't think many people can find somebody that they would be that comfortable with, that happy with, that they could know everything about that person and still just throw all their love into that relationship. And so that was I mean, idyllic to me. Absolutely. First of all, I have to say, Kevin's always had a natural ability to communicate with people and, I mean, reel people in. I mean, people always really liked Kevin from the moment they met him. So, yeah, I mean, Kevin had this amazing ability, and after all the tragedy that happened in his life, he was able to utilize that ability to change the lives of countless people. I mean, I don't meet people on a regular basis that say, hey, because I saw this movie, it changed my life. Because I don't talk to people a lot about their attempted suicides. It doesn't come up in my daily conversation. But I've met people all over the country who just in conversation are like, oh, did you see that movie about that guy? It was incredible. You're from San Francisco? The guy who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge? That guy's so inspirational. And so I don't hear about how Kevin stopped people from attempting suicide, but I definitely hear about how Kevin has been an inspiration to people. And I've had the opportunity to listen to him speak, and it's very, very powerful. Very powerful. He's a busy man trying to change lives all over the planet. So I can only imagine that there are tens of thousands of people that would be able to say that Kevin has changed my life for the better. Me personally?
You personally.
I was a scrawny kid when I was little and was just skin and bones. And so I was a sixth grader. My mom was trying to inspire me to do better in school and have something to look forward to because I wasn't loving the school that I was in. And we went on a tour of our high school, my future high school, and saw the mat room, saw a sign on the ceiling that said, "Thou shalt not get pinned," and I was hooked from that moment. It's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to that high school and wrestle there, and so I did. It's the only school I applied to. I had every intention of wrestling, and I did, and I loved it. I met many, many good friends. Kevin, not the least of them, so a very good friend in Kevin. So, my most memorable moment.
Yeah.
Kevin knows exactly which moment. So, right before, to put it short, right before a very pivotal match as a young wrestler. So I was wrestling up a couple weight classes, wrestling varsity when I was not varsity caliber. Kevin's dad showed up to watch us wrestle. I mouthed off to him, which I typically did, calling him a catfish or a pug face or something along those lines. And very slowly, casually, he grabbed my sleeve of my sweatshirt and the hood of my sweatshirt and just pulled me in as he raised his knee and kneed me in the groin. And it made me want to throw up, and I felt that through the about 33 seconds of the match that I lasted. Not that that changed the outcome of the match, but it was a terrible experience to happen before the war.
So you're saying you didn't win?
I was crushed. Yeah. Oh, I love seeing Pat. So I most recently saw Pat at one of Kevin's birthdays, and it was great to see him. He spoke to me like I was an adult, I think for the first time, as a 32-year-old, so it only took over a decade. But it was great to see him, and our relationship had been good. I talked to him a lot while Kevin was in the hospital and while Kevin was recovering from the injuries he sustained from his attempted suicide, and also through the years while he struggled with his mental health.
You had a separate experience with suicide.
I have.
Are you comfortable telling us about that? Keeping the person anonymous, of course, but letting us know what situation occurred and what role you played in the aftermath of that occurrence.
Yes. It was a childhood friend of my older siblings, and I had moved out of the home I grew up in as a kid and moved into his spare bedroom. So he wanted a roommate. I knew that he was bipolar and I didn't know at the time, but he had come off of his medication and was doing well for months, actually, and then started feeling depressed. And that might be why he invited me into his house, because he wanted to have another person around, somebody you could talk to. He was lonely, but a really, really good guy, a guy I grew up seeing. And I went out with my brother, my younger brother, and a bunch of friends one night, and I drove them home at 2 a.m. when we were done hanging out, watching, something. We were out at some bar. And I drove home to my house, his house, and all the lights were on. And I had been there earlier that day, and I was like, wow, that's weird. His car wasn't there, or that I could see. So I walked into the house and started roaming through the rooms, and made it to the kitchen, shut the lights off, his back bedroom, shut the lights off, the living room, shut the lights off. Was about to go to bed, I realized the lights were on in the garage still. So I walked into the garage, and he was hanging there from the rafters. He had killed himself with an extension cord. And I ran in and yelled his name and lifted him by the hips and looked up at his face and saw that. I mean, I had worked on an ambulance for a couple of years, and I just wrapped up paramedic school and knew that he was gone. But it made me feel like I went running out, grabbed my cell phone, called 911, and I had to leave the house because he was a healthy guy. He was a healthy, fairly young guy. He was in his 40s, and I had seen him maybe a day before, and so it felt like a murder scene. I felt like, oh my, somebody's gonna get me. So I ran out, jumped in my car, and just sat in my car and waited for the police to come. And I actually haven't gone back to that house since. So his brother owns the house, or I believe his brother owns the house, and said, "Oh, you can come pick up some things." And I was like, "Nah." "Oh, sure, I'll come get them." Never went back. Haven't driven down that street. I think I'd be comfortable with it now, but it took a long time. I slept with the lights on for a while, and needed when I went over to my brother's house, which is where I went that night, and ended up sleeping on his couch for 6 months because I wanted to be around more people and not go rent my own place and be in a place by myself. So I would have to go check the garage, close the garage door, like walk into a bathroom, peek behind the shower curtain. Like, I just was like, I don't know, I just was very uncomfortable for a while. And talked to people, and people empathized with me, and I mean, I worked through it. No. Not that I'm opposed to therapy, but I haven't done it. My friends. So, talking to Kevin, talking to our other good friends, hanging out with my brother and my niece, my brother's wife, just hanging around good people, being out in nature, exercising, working. So those things keep me centered. I have exercised fairly consistently since I was 12 years old. So I started going to the gym with my dad when I was very young. I have to mention my dad. I mean, he's always been an advice kind of guy. So we were talking about therapy. Talking to my dad is probably pretty therapeutic also. My dad's always been there to talk to and bounce ideas off and give me suggestions and whatnot. But to come back to fitness, I have been working out since I was 12. My dad taught me how to exercise in the fashion that he knew how. Because I was such a small kid, I wanted to get bigger, get stronger. My dad taught me in the fashion that he knew best. And with that knowledge, I put on a bunch of weight, started put on a bunch of muscle, started playing sports in high school, started lifting weights in high school, started working at a gym right after high school, and working out very regularly with a couple of my good buddies, and then began personal training, which is what I've done for many years. Absolutely. I have many private clients and clients who come to group classes who I can see their lives change for the better as they get more fit. I can see their lives become more in their control the more regularly they come to a class. And as they find a reason not to, as they start to get into better shape, and they're like, oh, maybe I don't need to do this as much. I need to start spending some more time doing this other thing, and they start fading away, and their life kind of derails a little bit, and then when they start coming back, it reels them back in. So definitely I see the waves of progress and regress that take place when they start working out and when they stop. It's everywhere. There are lots of people struggling with their mental health because they can't deal with something. I mean, I think many people deal with it in much shorter spans of time than Kevin and my other friend who committed suicide. So people deal with it for a couple of months. When it's really bad, it might last a year, and maybe that's the only time they ever experience a lot of depression. I've had spouses of my cousins end their lives, and so I've seen how it affects children and like children of the person who committed suicide and the wife and the family. The people that I know through the suicide that have affected their lives, the thing that brought me through my encounters with a suicide and attempted suicide has always been communication. So having people there, remembering good times, and having empathetic people in my life. So I have a lot of really good people in my life, and Kevin has a lot of really good people in his life. We share a lot of very good friends, and talking to those people, having an empathetic ear is very important. So maybe that's why I haven't done therapy, because I have a really solid base of people around me that will listen, not necessarily give feedback, just listen. And some people, and it's hard to find. I've been really lucky, so I've been blessed. And for those that haven't been as blessed with the empathetic ears around them, then the best thing I think is to seek help. Find people that have gone through or are going through the same things that you're dealing with, and figure out what works for you. No, I have not. I think it's important to note that Kevin's mental health is constantly a work in progress. So he has good days and bad days. The good days outnumber the bad days most of the time. This trip, we went out to Washington, D.C., and the bad days outnumbered the good days. And so if you've heard Kevin talk, he talks about how when he was in junior college, he thought that the Postal Service was after him. And we happened to walk by what's got to be the largest postal building in the United States. And although I try to be empathetic with Kevin, I don't often hesitate to kind of poke a little fun, have some fun with him, and then try and reel him back in. But Kevin will get very focused on things. And on this trip, he was focused on some drama that was going on in his life, and stayed up all night writing a letter to his wife. He's like, she's got to proofread this. I got to get this out to her. I was like, don't send anything until you wake up and you're in a clear state of mind and you get your wife's approval. Okay? Your wife needs to see these things before you start sending emails out. It was a great trip, though. We had a lot of fun, despite the struggles, and I got to listen to him speak, and it was awesome. It was stories that I was with him. I mean, I lived the stories with him. So it was really cool to hear them all in one really nice contiguous story, and listen to how people reacted to his story. Kevin would like to think that all of the experiences with him are wonderful. And much of them are. Kevin's a great guy. And I had a conversation with him recently that in addition to finding his wife who has brought him to a really healthy place and helped stabilize him, the work that he does is his passion. And he is living the dream of so many people to be able to affect so many others in a positive way. So he's a role model to me. And I wish every day that he knew that. That I hold him in a very high regard and am honored to be part of his life. And I hope that more people listen to his story and listen to him speak. If he's close to you, go see him, and he'll change your life. So I wasn't present when the culmination occurred, but as I've said, Kevin gets very fixated on things. And he also, as I said, became fairly attached to me. So he started believing everything I said. And Kevin is a big comic book guy. So we told him that adamantium was real. That's a marble substance that is meant to be the densest material in existence. So, at the climax of the situation, Kevin raised his hand during a lecture in an earth science class and told our science teacher that he was wrong and that adamantium was the hardest substance in the world. So,
adamantium is Wolverine's.
Yes, adamantium is the material bound to Wolverine's skeleton.
Harder than diamonds.
Yeah, that. You're welcome. He's welcome.
He got kicked out of class that day.
Yeah.
And he got a demerit and a detention.
Look where he is now, though.
Louie, thank you very much, brother.
You got it, bud.
Right on. It's a wrap.
Thank you, Jake.
That was awesome.